You know, keeping up with modern farming, it really feels like a constant balancing act these days.
It really does.
Growers are always under pressure, right? Bigger yields, better quality, and right at the core of all that is nitrogen.
Absolutely fundamental.
Yeah, investing in the best seeds, the smartest techniques. I mean, that's a given. But have you ever just stopped and thought, what if things could change, like radically?
How so?
What if our crops could just get much better at grabbing and using the nitrogen that's already, well, all around us, in the soil, in the air?
Oh, that's a really compelling thought. It definitely points towards a potential evolution in how we approach agriculture, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And imagine plants being more self-sufficient with this nutrient, drawing it more effectively from their environment.
Precisely. And that is exactly the territory we're diving into today. We're looking at a product called MAXI-N.
Okay.
Inside it, there's this fascinating little microorganism, Azospirillum brasilense. And it's basically designed to help crops do just that, use nitrogen way more efficiently.
Interesting. So the potential payoff could be stronger plants, better growth.
That's the idea. Stronger plants, better growth, potentially those bigger yields everyone wants, but maybe while being smarter about fertilizer use.
Right? Optimizing that input.
So our goal in this deep dive is really to unpack how MAXI-N works, understand the science, and explore what it could mean for boosting nitrogen use in fields, all based on the source material we've got here.
Okay, let's get into it then. Nitrogen, like you said, it's utterly essential for plant life. A primary yield-limiting nutrient, as they say.
Yeah, if a plant doesn't get enough, it just can't build the proteins, the chlorophyll, everything it needs to really thrive.
Exactly. No nitrogen, no growth, essentially.
And the way most farming works now, especially large scale, that usually means relying pretty heavily on manufactured nitrogen fertilizers.
It often does. Because if your soil's deficient, you're looking at really stunted growth, significant losses. It's that fundamental.
Right. But these fertilizers, even though they're crucial in many systems, they come with their own set of, well, challenges.
A significant set, yeah. You've got the costs, which could be substantial for the grower. Then there are the negative environmental impacts, which we need to talk about.
Definitely.
And also just the frustrating fact that often a big chunk of the nitrogen you apply, it doesn't even get used by the plants. It's wasted.
Which seems crazy when you think about it, because isn't the air, like, mostly nitrogen? Something like 78%?
That's exactly right. The irony is that nitrogen gas, N2, is incredibly abundant in the atmosphere. But plants, they just can't use it directly in that form.
It needs converting somehow.
It needs to be converted or fixed into a form they could absorb, like ammonia or nitrate.
Okay, and industrially, how do we do that? That's the Haber-Bosch process, isn't it?
Correct. Haber-Bosch is the main industrial method we use.
Yeah.
It takes that atmospheric N2 and converts it into ammonia, which is then used to make fertilizers. But the conditions required are pretty intense.
Intense how?
We're talking really high temperatures, 400 to 500 degrees Celsius, and very high pressures, 15 to 20 megapascals. It takes a huge amount of energy.
Wow. That sounds expensive, just in energy terms.
It is, and that energy demand directly impacts fertilizer prices. Plus, from an environmental standpoint, this one process accounts for about 1.8% of total global carbon emissions.
1.8%, just from making fertilizer.
Just from fixing nitrogen via Haber-Bosch, it's a significant chunk.
So, okay, we need nitrogen. Making it is energy hungry and has a carbon footprint, and then using it also has issues. The source material lays out some pros and cons, right?
It does. On the pro side, obviously, it's essential for growth, boosts yields, supports global food production. Can't argue with that.
We need it to feed everyone.
Exactly. But the cons, well, we've touched on the high cost and the environmental impact of production.
Yeah.
But there's also the low nutrient use efficiency. We mentioned the waste.
Right.
Plus price volatility in the market and these significant nitrogen losses after application.
Okay, let's break down those losses. The source mentions three main ways: leaching, denitrification, and volatilization. What's leaching?
Leaching is basically when nitrogen compounds, particularly nitrates, which are very soluble, get washed out of the soil by rain or irrigation.
And where do they end up?
They end up in water bodies, rivers, lakes, dams, even groundwater.
Which causes problems there, I assume.
Big problems. It leads to something called eutrophication. Essentially, you're over-fertilizing the water.
Ah, leading to things like algal blooms.
Precisely. Massive blooms of algae or other aquatic plants. The source mentions water hyacinths spreading in South Africa as a prime example of this kind of nutrient pollution.
Okay, so that's leaching. What about denitrification? Sounds a bit more complex.
It is, chemically speaking. It happens when certain soil bacteria, in conditions where there isn't much oxygen, convert nitrate, a useful form of nitrogen for plants, back into nitrogen gases.
Like the N2 in the air.
Some N2, yes, but also, crucially, into nitrous oxide, N2O.
N2O, that rings a bell, greenhouse gas.
A very potent one. The source notes it's about 300 times more potent than CO2 at trapping heat. So denitrification contributes to climate change, and it means less nitrogen is available for the crop.
A double whammy. And you said this happens in low oxygen soils, like waterlogged fields.
Exactly. Waterlogged, compacted, oxygen-poor soils are where denitrification really takes off. Those bacteria use the nitrate instead of oxygen to breathe, essentially.
So too much water can actually lead to losing nitrogen in a really harmful gaseous form.
Got it.
And the third one was volatilization.
Right. Volatilization is the loss of nitrogen to the atmosphere as ammonia gas, NH3.
Ammonia,
Okay.
like in cleaning products.
Same chemical formula, yeah. This happens particularly with urea-based fertilizers, especially if they're left on the soil surface.
Under what conditions?
It's worse in alkaline soil, so high pH, or in dry and warm conditions. Not incorporating the fertilizer into the soil makes it more likely to.
So between leaching, denitrification, and volatilization,
Mm.
it really sounds like a lot of the nitrogen we apply just disappears. The source gives a number, doesn't it?
It does. It estimates that typically somewhere between 30 and 50% of the nitrogen fertilizer applied is lost before the crop can even use it.
30 to 50%. That's huge. Financially for the farmer and environmentally.
Absolutely huge, which really highlights why we desperately need ways to improve nitrogen use efficiency, get more of that nitrogen into the plant.
Are there things farmers are already doing?
Oh, yes. The source lists several good practices, things like splitting nitrogen applications, applying smaller amounts more often, using precision techniques to put fertilizer exactly where it's needed.
Smart farming tech.
Exactly. Also using controlled release fertilizers that meter out nitrogen slowly. Physically incorporating fertilizer into the soil helps reduce volatilization. And planting cover crops can help capture and recycle nitrogen too.
So a whole toolkit of strategies.
Right. And then the source introduces another angle, using nature's own helpers. Plant growth promoting bacteria, or PGPB.
And that's where MAXI-N comes back into the picture.
Precisely. It's positioned as one of these PGPB solutions, a way to potentially improve that nitrogen efficiency, boost yields, and lessen the environmental footprint.
How does it claim to do that? The source mentioned 3 key things.
Yeah, 3 main mechanisms. First, converting atmospheric nitrogen into plant-available forms, basically, getting free nitrogen from the air. Second, improving the plant's own ability to utilize the nitrogen it takes up.
Okay.
And third, boosting photosynthesis itself, leading to more biomass and potentially higher yields.
Those are some big claims, and the key player here is that bacterium, Azospirillum brasilense.
That's the one. It's described as a well-studied, widely used PGPB.
And MAXI-N itself, it's an official product.
It seems so. The source states it's produced in South Africa, registered as a biofertilizer, Reg number M92, Act 36 of 1947, Fertilizer Group 3, a bacterial inoculant.
That gives it some credibility. What about the formulation?
It's a liquid formulation. Contains a minimum concentration of the sile. Brasilense 1 × 10⁻⁷. That's 10 million colony-forming units per gram. And it apparently has a 9-month shelf life and is suitable for organic farming, which is interesting.
And how's it used? Just in the soil?
Well, what's really versatile, according to the source, is that while A. brasilensis is naturally found in soil, applying it can give crops a boost. And you can apply MAXI-N in multiple ways, as a seed treatment, directly to the soil, or even as a foliar spray onto the leaves.
Onto the leaves. That's interesting. So it's quite adaptable.
Very adaptable. And it seems to work with a wide range of plants, not just one specific crop type. It forms a kind of symbiotic relationship.
Symbiotic, meaning both sides benefit.
Exactly. The bacteria provide things to the plant, nitrogen fixation, of course, but also growth-promoting enzymes, plant hormones like auxins and cytokinins, even antioxidants.
And what does the plant give back?
The plant provides the bacteria with carbon sources, sugars, basically for energy, and a safe place to live, primarily around the roots in the rhizosphere.
So it's a classic win-win. And we're essentially harnessing this natural partnership for sustainable agriculture.
That's the goal, improving nitrogen efficiency, boosting yields, using these natural plant microbe interactions.
Okay, let's dig into how MAXI-N actually does these things. The first mechanism was biological nitrogen fixation, BNF, delivering that free nitrogen.
Right, so this Azospirillum bacterium has a special enzyme called nitrogenase.
Nitrogenase.
This enzyme gets activated under low oxygen conditions,
Right.
which you often find in the soil near plant roots. And what nitrogenase does is pretty amazing. It takes N2 gas from the air and converts it into ammonia, NH3.
So it's doing chemically what Haber-Bosch does industrially, but biologically, at normal temperatures and pressures.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
On a microscopic scale, using biological machinery instead of massive industrial energy. It's quite remarkable.
That is remarkable. And what happens to that ammonia?
It can either be directly absorbed by the plant roots, or the plant and bacteria can convert it into amino acids, the building blocks for proteins and growth.
How much nitrogen are we talking about? Can it make a real difference?
The source suggests it's variable. Depends on conditions, the plant, the environment. But studies show it can fix between 10 and 40 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare per year under good conditions.
10 to 40 kilos per hectare. Yeah, that's not insignificant. That could definitely offset some fertilizer needs.
It could indeed. And the source notes that this fixation is generally thought to be higher with soil applications because that nitrogenase enzyme prefers those low oxygen spots found in the soil.
Makes sense. Okay, so that's BNF. The second mechanism was improving nitrogen utilization. There was an acronym, NUT.
Yes, NUT, nitrogen utilization efficiency.
Right. Break that down for us. What does it mean?
Think of it simply as how well the plant uses the nitrogen it has absorbed to actually produce something, yield, biomass, whatever you're measuring. It's like the plant's internal efficiency rating for nitrogen.
So total yield divided by total nitrogen uptake.
Basically, yeah. A higher NUT means the plant is getting more productive output from every bit of nitrogen it takes in. More bang for your nitrogen buck, as you said earlier.
Got it. So how does MAXI-N boost this NUT?
Several ways, according to the source. First, it stimulates root growth, especially those fine root hairs. It does this by producing plant hormones, like IAA, indole-3 acetic acid.
More roots means?
More surface area, better ability to explore the soil and absorb water and nutrients, including nitrogen.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
It also seems to enhance the activity of nitrate transporters. These are proteins that physically move nitrate into the roots and around the plant, so better transport systems.
Like upgrading the plant's internal plumbing for nitrogen.
Kind of, yeah. Then it increases the activity of key enzymes involved in nitrogen metabolism, the ones that convert absorbed nitrogen into amino acids and proteins. Makes the internal processing more efficient.
Okay.
And finally, it produces other growth hormones, auxins, cytokinins, gibberellins, which generally rev up the plant's metabolism and stimulate nitrogen assimilation.
Wow. Okay. So it's helping the plant get more nitrogen in through better roots and transport, and then helping it use that nitrogen more effectively through enzymes and hormones. Sounds quite comprehensive.
It does seem to tackle it from multiple angles.
And the third mechanism was improved photosynthesis. How does that tie in?
Well, photosynthesis is the engine of the plant, right? Converting sunlight into energy. MAXI-N apparently helps boost this engine.
How? Just by making the plant healthier overall with better nitrogen use.
That's part of it, yes. Better nitrogen status, better root development that all supports a healthier, more photosynthetically active plant. But there seems to be a more direct effect, too.
Which is?
It helps increase chlorophyll content in the leaves.
Ah, the green stuff that captures sunlight.
Exactly. The source says the cytokinins produced by the bacteria help delay leaf senescence, that's the natural aging and yellowing of leaves, and they also stimulate chlorophyll synthesis.
So greener leaves for longer.
Essentially, more chlorophyll means better light absorption, higher rates of photosynthesis, which means the plant produces more sugars, more biomass, and ultimately, potentially, more yield.
Okay, so let's recap the three pillars. Biological nitrogen fixation gives you free nitrogen. Improved nitrogen utilization efficiency means the plant uses all nitrogen better. And improved photosynthesis ramps up the plant's energy production.
That's a good summary. Free nitrogen, better use of all nitrogen, and a more powerful engine.
It sounds like a powerful combination. Now, application methods seemed important. Foliar versus soil. Let's talk foliar spraying on the leaves. What's the advantage there?
When you spray MAXI-N on the leaves, the source says the bacteria can live on the leaf surface and even enter through the stomata, those little pores.
Okay.
The benefit is direct action right there in the leaves, improved nutrient exchange, better utilization locally, and production of those growth hormones right where photosynthesis is happening.
Like a targeted boost directly to the leaves.
Exactly. And it can be especially useful if root uptake is limited, maybe due to drought or soil compaction. It bypasses those soil issues to some extent.
So it's good for stressful conditions or maybe quick top-ups.
That seems to be the idea. Good for supplementing during key growth stages when demand is high. The source even suggests combining it with a specialized foliar feed could work well.
Right. Now, what about soil application? Putting it near the roots.
Applying it to the soil allows the Azospirillum to colonize the rhizosphere, the root zone. This gives you that sustained stimulation of root growth we talked about, improving uptake throughout the season.
And the nitrogen fixation happens there too, right? In the low oxygen soil spots.
Correct. That's where the BNF primarily occurs. So soil application provides that longer-term benefit, especially for crops that grow for a while.
More of a foundational approach.
You could say that.
Yeah.
And it's flexible too. You can apply it at planting as a side dress later on, or through irrigation systems, which they call fertigation.
Seems like lots of options for farmers. The source mentioned combining methods.
Yes, it suggests that often using both soil and foliar applications might give the best overall results, ensuring the benefits are there from the start right through to harvest.
Covering all the bases. Okay, for anyone actually thinking of using this, the instructions are critical. The source gives some general pointers like mixing and spraying within a few hours, doing it early morning or late afternoon.
Standard practice for biologicals, yeah.
Yeah.
Avoid harsh sun. And check compatibility. If mixing with other things, contact the company, UPL.
Right. And then it gets really specific, crop by crop, dosages, methods, timing. It covers a lot. Maize, wheat, veggies, beans, even avocados and grapes.
It does provide detailed recommendations. For instance, maize and similar crops. 1 to 2 liters per hectare via sprayer or irrigation, starting a week or two after emergence, maybe 2-4 times. Or a seed treatment rate.
And it varies for different crops like leafy greens, maybe starting application a bit later.
Exactly. Cabbage, lettuce, etc., maybe 14-21 days after emergence, fewer applications further apart. It really highlights that you need to tailor it to the specific crop's growth cycle and needs.
It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach. Even though the bacteria is versatile, the instructions seem key.
Absolutely. Getting the application right, timing, method, rate is crucial for any input, especially a biological one.
So just to wrap up the core benefits again, MAXI-N with this Azospirillum aims to 1. Convert atmospheric nitrogen into plant food, the free nitrogen.
Sure.
2. Improve how efficiently the plant uses all the nitrogen it gets.
Yes.
And 3. Enhance photosynthesis for better growth and potentially more yield.
Correct. Those are the 3 main pillars.
And it's a registered product, Fertilizer Group 3, with contact details available for UPL South Africa if people need more info.
All noted in the source material.
Okay, so concluding this deep dive, MAXI-N really represents a fascinating nature-based approach to tackling this huge nitrogen challenge in agriculture.
It certainly does. Using Azospirillum brasilense this way holds out the potential, at least, to reduce reliance on synthetic fertilizers, which could ease some of those economic and environmental pressures we talked about right at the start.
Yeah, by providing some free nitrogen, making better use of what's there, boosting the plant's own energy production. It's a multi-pronged strategy.
It is, and it leads us to a final thought, really, for you listening.
Go on.
Considering what we've discussed, how do you see the potential for biofertilizers like MAXI-N? Could they genuinely help shape more sustainable, more efficient farming down the line? And maybe even, how does learning about innovations like this change how you think about your food, where it comes from, and our connection to, environmental responsibility?
That's definitely something to chew on. Lots to think about there.